we go. I had a talk with the doctor, not the psych doctor, the skin doctor, and they didn't take a test sample of the mole, but they did mention that it has two colors. It has I believe the word was uh, broken edges, I think was the word, but I can't be sure, and that it had two colors. And because of how it started as a zit and then developed into a mole, they would like to take a test sample of it. But since the skin doctor, was not available today and will be in work tomorrow, the staffers there will call the nurse here, and the nurse will inform me as to the time of the event when it needed to be taken. The doctor had a clear voice of uh, the second lightest, I believe, level of worry. It wasn't the lightest level of worry. There was a genuine note of a tiniest bit of fear, but not the tiniest. I don't know if that makes sense. And they said not to lose any sleep over it. I'm not losing any sleep over it, but it is itchy and it does feel mildly burning. I believe the word they used was infection looking. And they said that it is most likely I think the English word is a fatty mole or something along those lines, which is very normal. But as they said, it had uneven edges, it had two colors, and since it started from a zit, it looks like a test sample might be worth doing to rule out anything negative. I informed them that I would prefer it be removed while the sample is being taken because it is one of those things that itches unnicely. Now, in our public healthcare system since I believe the 90s, they do not like to remove moles in the public healthcare because it is one of those things which you should attend to the private sector for. It is minor, but doing 500,000 mole removals a year does add up in costs from doing actual cancer tests and such. So we would prefer it if you spend your own money on the tiny cosmetic things instead of other people's money, if you will. So the prognosis is good. So I will be keeping you. There we go. That's the stress part. Ooh, cancer thoughts. I will be keeping you up to date on this. And it does indeed seem like it is not cancer due to the reaction of the doctor, but there was genuine fear in the air. I could tell it from the body language and so on. So I do have some level of worry about this. But my guides and my ability to get myself to sleep comfortably have been tuned over a childhood where I had 3 nightmares a week. It was quite appalling and quite serious. It was one of those hellish times, which was beyond belief bad. But since then, I have developed into a point where I have one nightmare perhaps every 3 months, and every night has dreams which are in their detail completely indistinguishable from reality. There is, even when I wake up in the dream, the weirdest thing is that I can walk and lift my legs below me and float in the yoga posture. That is the weirdest thing in the dreams. All of it is real. It feels completely real and completely benign. There are literally no hostile dreams for me. I believe I can remember the worst nightmares of the past 15 years with one hand's fingers, so they are very minor. So that was the cancer news. It is going well. And while there, I took the opportunity to ask the doctors in Astral several things about their relative position to each other, which race in the Warhammer mythos they most associate with, who they believe themselves to be in the Warhammer mythos and so on. And they said that they are not, in fact, Tau, which I assumed earlier that they were Tau due to their uh, tendency to step on the rights of others for the greater good. Doctors are one of the few groups who are assumed to be able to overrule everybody, in fact, in society. There is not a single person in society who can stand up to a doctor. If the doctor is your personal physician and he declares that you have a mental illness that makes you incapable of making choices, your free life is over. There is nothing you can do. They are the only group who can imprison you for life on a single decision that cannot be appealed against. That to me makes them seem like Tau, the ethereal caste who seek the greater good and brainwash everybody below them. This doctor, this nurse rather, who I was talking with, said in the astral that they are more along the lines of the Inquisition because they seek the things which are harming their subservients or below them and then eliminate them, but not Tau in the sense of doing so for the greater good. They do it for the good of that person and perhaps the structure of the ego instead of some elaborate position of thought. Now, I'm not completely convinced. I had some talks with them, and in my average posture, if you will, the spirit of anybody who I talk with follows me around for some amount of time. The memory, the smells, the pheromones, the aura, the spirit, whatever you want to call it, follows me for a while, and then after a while kind of dissipates on its own. But for some time, I can feel them and their presence. And while I talk with this nurse who is interested in following me, I can assure you that the real nurse may be peripherally at most aware of this conversation that happens. It is possible, but I wouldn't dig into it. And I'm not completely convinced, based on the conversation that they have with me once they are following me, that they are Imperial Inquisition. But it does have some resonance. It doesn't feel completely wrong. The Tau are off-putting in a healthcare position. To understand better, you need to play the Dawn of War series and watch the Tau winning scenario, what they do with the humans. Now, Sisters of Battle kill everybody. They always barbecue everybody. But the Inquisition, when well run, doth not do that. So that is about it. And I also saw one of those lizard women in the center where I live. One of the staffers has finally taken off her mask, and in both literal sense due to the corona, and spiritual sense in that she, without the mask, has a very clear reptilian face. She has some of the attributes that clearly define a reptilian according to the Lucretia dialogue. And she looked very warm and friendly, as if I had finally breached the threshold and become fully sentient of this thing again, which seems to point to the fact that there is a war in heaven, if you will. But this is something we have discussed in great detail. Now, there are some other topics that I'd want to cover here, such as the recent events of the war against the Illuminati, but it hasn't developed far enough for me to take a serious stance on it. It hasn't developed strong at the moment, other than the fact that it does indeed seem to develop in the direction of violence, which I dislike. I will say that after the events of the LSD, meth, the mushrooms, the 10-year-long cycle of weed, I feel like the world has advanced by 1,000 years. Can you imagine going to bed without psychic abilities and waking up the next day, and everybody is suddenly a full-blown psyker. Telepathy is something that everybody has. It's not something like when I was growing and some of you were growing up. Telepathy was something that was discussed in the New Age circles as something that might be a human trait at a later date. It was laughed about by everyone in the organized society. And now everyone is telepathic. And it's not just the voices I hear, it's literally people telling me to my face, real, literal physical people telling me to my face that they can smell my thoughts in what I smell like, telling that to me. And to me, it makes sense. It's pheromones. You can smell the pheromones, the mood of the other person. To the present generation, saying that I can smell your emotions, I can feel your emotions, I can feel when you are worried, I can feel when you are happy, is normal. To the present generation, that is what you're supposed to be able to do. But you must understand that when I was born, all the way up to perhaps 20 or 25, no one had that ability. Everyone assumed that if you said you can sense somebody else's emotions, you're crazy. And that's the end of it. Then I went to bed and I wake up later, and everyone assumes that they can sense everyone else's emotions. And the ones that cannot smell emotions or are weirded by it or don't seem native to the ability to smell emotions are considered oddities. They are considered cavemen. And that to me paints the picture of how aging happens. You are overtaken by the next generations and their abilities. And to them, it seems like something everyone should be able to do naturally, but it is not something that your generation was able to do. And I believe this is how we have developed as a species and got an understanding of things like telepathy, emotions, soft parenting, social justice, and so on and so forth. These are attributes that the previous generation did not oppress, it just did not exist. And these abilities and their development point to the direction that within a few generations, the generation that started a few generations ago will consider the time to be not 50 years ahead, not 100 years ahead in technological development, literally thousands or even millions of years ahead in technological development. It seems that it is so massive how humanity changes and develops in the span of a few decades, not to even mention a few generations, that it is beyond words. You can't explain to a generation ago, like in the 1990s, that everybody is telepathic and they can sense everybody else's emotions. It's not that they were blocking it somehow, it just didn't exist. I spent a decade looking for psychic abilities, looking for the ability to sense emotions in others, everything. And the only answer society had was that you must assume that you are picking up their emotions, that you must play along if you see them. You must believe that you are able to decompress their emotions or decode their emotions, that you must put yourself in their shoes, things like that. And now everybody just says it's a smell, it's emotion as a smell. You just go and you smell what the other person is feeling. And it is so natural to this generation. And it's like they can't understand that it didn't exist 10 years ago. You could not pick up somebody else's emotions. You can watch the very high end science fiction series or movies like the like What the Bleep or the one with the dreamer guy made in that weird art style, I can't remember its name, or even science fiction like The Next Generation. You have one very specialized person whose duty it is to explain the emotions of weird people or each other to each other and explain what emotion they are feeling. That is their duty because they were the only one able to sense emotions and it was considered the weird thing. And now everybody is like, if you can't sense emotions, you're dead on the inside. And it is so weird. And going with the idea that any ability that we now have, if others don't have it, they're somehow deformed or badly developed or they've gone through some trauma because they don't have it, is maladjustive. It is counterproductive. It doesn't understand the point that evolution in this way is so quick that 2 generations ago will look literally like brain damaged people to 2 generations after them. They will seem so primitive and so out of touch that it provokes a great sense of anger in the new generation. But that is just what it was like a few generations ago. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I remember in high school or in like normal school, like in the 1 to 6th grade, where I talked in class about telepathy and sensing emotions, and everybody else was like, oh, you're talking about invading my mind and my space. Oh, you're being the evil scientific guy. And I was like, okay. And then when I look at the modern day, if I talk about blocking the ability to sense other people's emotions and valuing your own private space and valuing the ability to push out others and create your own mindscape where you play with your own thoughts and emotions, they go like, oh, you're a psychopath. Oh, you're a schizophrenic. And I'm like, you do realize the things change. When I was a kid, this was the method we used to entertain ourselves. We created side personalities. We had adventures in our mind. We played Dungeons and Dragons on tabletops. And in the modern era, you just see these weird forms of communicative entertainment. Like, what's a good example? Well, Norse Map, for example. You see such a highly developed, highly tuned machine with which to play incredible mind games that explain to you the secrets of how the politicians feel, how the universe works, and how everything is love, and so on and so forth, and all this jazz. And you're like, I used to do this in my mind. Now it happens here out for real. And in a generation, people will have that ability as most likely some form of biological evolutionary adaptation or even some kind of Elon Muskish uh, brain implant. And everyone will no longer talk in fuzzy emotions, pheromones, and so on. They will upload specific brain patterns and their relative positions to the other brain patterns so that you can see what makes those emotions instead of just those emotions. And you can see, oh, your sense of love is powered by these thoughts in this order. And using this order, I feel nauseous, but I understand that for you, this is love. I prefer that you send me love instead of this emotion of your brain because your brain processes love differently. I feel nauseous when I contact that. And that will be completely normal. And everyone will be able to transmit not just thoughts, which is what this generation does, but the building blocks constituting those thoughts and their relative positions to one another. This will happen within a generation at most. It will possibly happen even within 10 years. And once again, everybody will adjust like that is the normal, and not doing that is the weirdness. And they will once again hunt the primitives because that's what they do. Because, everybody has to be the advanced guy. I can tell you that this is completely true. So, yeah, try to get adjusted to it because it's gonna be around for a while. So, yeah, the doctors and the nurses said that they are more along the lines of the Imperial Inquisition, but based on this planet's very rapid pace of technological development, it seems Tau is still something of a possibility, if not a probability. But I will be playing along with the idea that they are the Inquisition, and I will see what occurs. I have been trying to get into the new Stellaris long play, but I've been doing other things. I've been not, excuse me, I've been not getting into it. Oh, one thing, and this you will think is schizophrenic, but when you watch your computer and watch art on your computer, when I was a kid, it was considered completely normal for you to watch your computer in the nude, like be in your bathrobe and get to the computer and click on the computer and just like watch normal stuff like Star Trek in the nude after you come from the shower. But in the modern era, you can already feel it manifesting, building itself. The people you watch on the TV feel like they feel awkward when you're nude. And this will manifest itself. It may not manifest itself in a generation, but it will manifest itself. Now, to get a true grasp of what I mean, watch something from the 1920s when it was black and white that still had voice in your native language and compare the people of that era to your modern era, and you will feel that they feel a completely different sense of humanity. They feel it's like looking at elves, really. It is that different. So I'm going to try to play the Stellaris game, but I cannot guarantee it. So that's it for this update. TLDR, probably not melanoma. Doctor thinks it's a fat mole instead of a melanoma mole, but would like to take a test sample of it just to be sure. The sample will be taken sometime next week, and the results may be a week after that, and I will inform you of the results. And the doctors seem to not be Tau, but Imperial Inquisition for what's that, well, for what that is worth. Good day.